I'm a big believer that everybody in the practice can be a leader.
Not only do I believe everyone can be a leader, I think everyone should be. Your life did train you to be a leader. Dental assistants, man, the potential that they have to really make that team by stepping up into their leadership role. Leadership is not something that just falls into the lap of one person. Are you a dental assistant? Are you something more? Being an assistant. Your greatness is there.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Dental Assistant Nation podcast powered by Ignite DA. My name is Kevin Henry, the co-founder of Ignite DA, and as always, I am so honored that you've taken time out of your busy schedule to spend a few minutes with us. Today's going to be a really great episode. I'm very excited for you to meet a dear friend of mine as well as a great dental consultant who's out there, and his name is Shawn Pierce. Shawn, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing really well, Kevin, up here in northern Canada. How are you down there in Colorado, my friend?
You know, I think we've been having the same weather for a little bit. So, I think I'm a little bit ahead of you, but you'll thaw out soon, my friend.
I love my winter for 3 months. My 3-month quota has hit its limit. I'm ready to move on to spring.
Well, here's hoping it happens quickly. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will agree with you on that one. So, hey, will you just take a minute and introduce yourself before we dive into today's topic?
Yeah, I'd love to. Okay. Thanks very much for having me today, Kevin. As you said, my name's Shawn Pierce. People don't know me. I am a recovering lawyer. I did practice law for 14 years up here in Canada and decided there was a different way to approach the dental world that I thought could make a more positive influence. So went back, got an MBA, and I'm out there. I do my best to try to help dental teams realize their full potential through working as a team, for everyone having that ability to recognize the contribution that they can make as leaders in the practices they work in. And I operate a group purchasing organization up here in Canada, and my focus is to make sure that I'm creating the best dental CEOs out there.
And I love that because I know all of our dental assistants want to either work with those great CEOs or maybe even one day become one of those great CEOs. So I'm excited to have you on today. And, you and I have talked, and we just completed doing a podcast for the Speaking Consulting Network, which you and I are both members of, on leadership. And we were talking about more leadership from the dentist side of things. But I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit today about leadership from the assistant side of things, because I'm a big believer that everybody in the practice can be a leader. I'm a big believer that everybody has those traits within them. And I believe you feel that way as well. Am I right?
Oh, 100%. And not only do I believe everyone can be a leader, I think everyone should be. Everyone has that leadership capacity. There's so much that life teaches us about being leaders, and absolutely take any sort of leadership assistant instructional course if you feel that that's going to be a benefit to you. But understand, your life did train you to be a leader, and dental assistants, man, the potential that they have to really make that team by stepping up into their leadership role. Wow. I know I don't have to convince you on that.
No, absolutely. I look at all the amazing men and women out there who are doing this every day, and I see leaders. I really do, even if they don't see it in themselves so often. And I wanted to talk to you about a concept that you brought to me whenever we were first playing this podcast. And we talked about primary leadership in the practice versus secondary leadership in the practice. And I wonder if you just kind of untangle that a little bit for our listeners and what that means and how it applies to them.
Yeah, I think it's a great concept. And to me, it underlies the absolute vital importance that people understand that leadership is not something that just falls into the lap of one person. I think traditionally, maybe it's a sort of a hierarchical approach to the way we've dealt with life. And in the past, everyone has always sort of said, you are the CEO, you're the boss, you're the owner of the practice, whatever the title, you're the leader and everything falls with you. The buck stops with you, so on and so forth. And I don't want to take away from the importance of those expressions. I think there's still validity to it, but I don't think we ever in the past fully explored the fact that it doesn't mean there are not other absolutely vital levels of leadership. And I think dental assistants in particular are so well positioned to play that role. We talked about this great video that I encourage people, if they want to Google it, just look up leadership lessons from the dancing guy. And you'll get this video. It's kind of grainy. It's about 10 years old, obviously shot from somebody's phone. The people in it are certainly of questionable sobriety. And it's about this person looking at like they're at some outdoor concert or festival, and he's being the nut that dances just like a crazy person out in front of the world for the world to see. And if nobody joins that person forever remains just that crazy nut. And maybe that's the dentist you're working with. Maybe you're working with a dentist that has some different ideas. And maybe some members of the team kind of hear what the dentist has to think and sort of go, this is different. I'm not too sure about this. But imagine that you are now that dental assistant, just like in this dancing guy video, who things really take off on that video when the second person comes in. And that second person takes on the secondary leadership role. And that leadership role is to tell everybody else, maybe this person isn't such a nut after all. Let's all be there and let's support them because, there's so many new ideas coming out in the world of dentistry. So many dentists that have different visions from what maybe was in the past. We're seeing culturally a huge change in the world of dentistry coming our way as more and more women get out there as dentists. Mm-hmm. They're going to bring ideas that are going to be a little bit different to the industry. And isn't it great to have that dental assistant that's prepared to have the courage to get up there with that dancing nut and dance with them and let the rest of the world know it's okay to be a nut and just dance to a whole new drum.
And you introduced me to that video, and I've got to tell you, I watched it, and it was a really fascinating sociology experiment. I mean, there's no question about it. But the thing that really stood out to me was, well, I guess there were two things. Number one, you've always heard the expression, dance like no one else is watching. Well, they were. There's no doubt about that, even though there were plenty. But the second thing was the lack of fear. And you mentioned it a minute ago, the lack of fear of just being out there and being themselves. And I don't know if it really took courage, or maybe liquid courage in this case, to do that. But I hear so often from dental assistants about, well, I could never do that. That'll never work in my practice, all these different things. And it's that self-defeating mentality even before they get a chance to start the dance.
Yeah. And obviously, we're working in dentistry. We're working with people's oral health. I'm certainly not going to advocate that they go find liquid courage to get into the workplace and make that change.
Amen.
But part of that, to be perfectly honest, does sort of start with that primary leader. If you find yourself as that dental assistant who's working with that primary leader who's not willing to embrace your power and your capacity to help make the change and help have the courage to see the world differently, then maybe that's a sign that you're not in the right place. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing. There are other dental homes out there for you where that leader is going to recognize your greatness, and that leader is going to count on you, and that leader is going to encourage you to have that courage. And I think that's an important element. I hate to say it, it's in the title of the role. Maybe we need a different title. This whole idea about the assistant. It's hard to sort of, for a lot of people to think of themselves as a leader at the same time as they're an assistant.
That's interesting.
So maybe we need to come up with a different expression, just a different title for that role, because man, that assistant can be your greatest dental cheerleader. How are you going to harness that? And how are you going to let them live up to their potential?
And I guess that's why I get on my soapbox so many times about the difference between team and staff. And I think that's a mentality in so many practices, is that this is my staff. And I think right there, it kind of squashes a little bit of that whole secondary leadership and everybody being a leader thought whenever they think that there is this hierarchy that's there and they're not at the top of it. And it's certainly not a linear hierarchy either.
Yeah. And look, it doesn't change the ultimate reality that practice owner does have to ultimately be the one that makes the decisions. We're not here to say, to create a world of anarchy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's not what's going to work, but is the practice owner prepared to allow your greatness to shine? And maybe we are kind of constrained by our own language and how we've set things up in the world. And the world is going through a huge rethink on so many levels with the language that we use. And sometimes maybe we need to look at that and see, are you a dental assistant? Are you, I don't want to say something more, because I don't think that's the right way to convey it. But I just don't want them to think of themselves with the handcuffs and the shackles of being an assistant. Your greatness is there. Your secondary leadership skills are there. And who knows? I think, you said at the beginning, maybe they wind up working with that dentist that allows them to foster their primary leadership skills. And the dentist might be sorry to see them go onto a different role somewhere, but, they'll applaud them. And the best thing about that is if you've got that primary leadership that can applaud that move, finding that next secondary leader, they'll be lined up at the door because that the world talks.
And I want to make sure our audience knows 3 things before you leave it in the comments. Number 1, we're not advocating for liquid courage in the practice, as Shawn said. Number 2, we're not advocating for chaos in the practice. And number 3, we're not advocating that you quit your job. But I really do want to hit that point, Shawn, is that there's so many assistants out there who don't feel like they're in the right spot or don't feel like that they're maybe being used to the best of their abilities. And now more than ever, there's that opportunity for assistants to really explore if there are other practices out there where they can be embraced for their leadership.
To me, I actually think that's a great thing. I know it's a challenge, and it's just a challenge because we've never had to think that way. And rethinking the world at times, that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying the world needs a complete makeover, but boy, it doesn't mean we don't need to improve some aspects. And to be able to look at it and recognize that there are a whole host of ideas and a wealth of knowledge and talents within our teams that maybe we've underutilized. And now we can rethink things and find a way to allow them to step up and encourage them to step up and be that secondary leader that supports the dancing nut and just sort of create that excitement and that movement that everyone wants to run, and they all want to be dancing nuts.
And that's a really interesting point because I've heard from assistants, and maybe you have as well, that they're drawn to other practices or they see these team members at CE meetings who just glow whenever they talk about where they work. And I think it's because they've found their spot and they feel comfortable dancing there. And I think that that is really something that is so overlooked in this age where we're doing hiring bonuses and, I'll give you a raise if you stay and all this stuff. It really is about finding that place where you fit the best and are the most comfortable as well.
One of the things that I've sort of told a lot of dentists, in my opinion, is some of them have obviously complained about the way the market has driven things. And I kind of remind them that, when the market was keeping wages down, you certainly weren't complaining about it then.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's funny. Now, all of a sudden, there's a problem with the market when it pushes salaries up. And I get that. And everyone's had to adjust. But I find those who adjusted the least were those that already had generous compensation packages and, more importantly, had a different approach to how they treated their team. Because those are the places that nobody wanted to leave. Yeah, maybe they looked at it and said, gee, I can make $8 to $10, maybe even more an hour in another location, and I can't not explore that possibility. But boy, if you even came close, I'm not leaving you because of just your willingness to embrace me as the secondary dancing nut and allow me to shine on that level.
Yeah. And I think that that's worth a conversation, honestly. It's worth saying, I want to be a leader. I want to be more free. I want to fit in better, and not keeping all that to yourself, but really having that honest conversation with that primary leader in the practice about what you'd like for your role maybe to look like.
And let's face it, the skills that the dental assistants bring to the table, the trust that patients have in them, there's just so many things that they have at their disposal that they can use to their advantage to help support the team if you just let them.
Amen. Amen to that, my friend.
Join us at CE on the Beach, June 26th to 28th, 2025, at the stunning Westin Grand Cayman Resort and Spa. This is the ultimate destination event for dentists, teams, coaches, and speakers. Save your spot now and get $150 off with promo code KHENRY. Visit ceonthebeach.com to register today.
Well, I feel like this is a topic we could talk about for a long time, and I know dental assistants are very interested in this because they always want to see how to have a better day and a better career So I'm going to ask you, is there a way that they can get a hold of you if there are questions that they have or they'd like to maybe pick your brain a little bit more about leadership?
100%. I mean, I can be reached at email at shawnpeers@rogers.com. You spell that ShawnPeers. They can find me through the website at www.dentalpeers.ca. Find me on Facebook or LinkedIn, any of those sort of places. I like to think I'm out there enough. I'm not too hard to find. I don't hide in the corners.
You do not. I can attest to that. And absolutely. And if you can't find Shawn, hey, reach out to us through the Dental Assistant Nation podcast, and we'll be happy to put you in touch. Shawn, thanks so much for the time, man. I really enjoyed talking to you.
It's always a pleasure to spend time with you, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of you for listening to this episode. We always love whenever our assistants take a few minutes out of their schedule to listen to some of the great thoughts that are out there from people who admire you just as much as we do here at the Dental Assistant Nation podcast. So if you like what you heard today, hey, share it with a friend. Give us those ratings on Google, Apple, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. We want to make sure that more and more assistants know about this resource. And until next time, Kevin Henry signing off for the Dental Assistant Nation podcast. And as always, reminding you that together we rise.